in Papua New Guinea, clearing rainforest. They're going to build a pipeline from there to again undertake submarine tailings disposal. So I've made it this far and starting to think, well, uranium mining is going to have to be pretty darn bad to impress me worse than this. Here's a method of uranium mining that we utilise in South Australia called in situ leaching. An acid solution is pumped down into some sand that contains uranium. It's then pumped back up. They get the uranium out of it and put the solution back down to leave it there. Now it looks pretty good in a diagram, but sometimes these things don't look as good in real life. Actually, it turns out it does look pretty good in real life. It kind of looks like a big above ground plumbing system. I consider this a remarkably low impact form of mining to get something incredibly useful out of the ground. Now, not all uranium mining is done this way. A lot of the uranium in Australia is coming from open cast mines. The in situ leaching method, however, is used a lot in Kazakhstan, that is now the largest producer of uranium currently. So it is relevant on a global scale. These pictures come from Ethiopia Resources. They're responsible for their in South Australia. And then I thought, how much mining we have to do also matters. Whether it's good or it's bad, do we have to do a lot or a little of it to get our energy? And I thought, let's look at the energy content of these two materials to work that out. In a tonne of coal, you get 29.3 gigajoules of energy. In a tonne of uranium, put through a current generation light water nuclear reactor, you get 14,000 to 23,000 tonnes of coal equivalent. So if you change that to gigajoules to compare with the previous figure, it's somewhere between 420 and 675,000 gigajoules. So I already knew before I did this that uranium has more energy than coal. The scale of that, though, absolutely blows my mind. Which of these two energy sources belongs in the 18th century? And which belongs in the 21st century? It's very clear from that with such an incredibly different energy density, we can do significantly less mining to produce the energy that we need and get less environmental impact. So the only conclusion I can make is that uranium mining is unremarkable. At worst, it's unremarkable compared to other forms of mining. At best, with the in situ leaching, it's quite good. But the vastly greater energy content means that the overall impact is likely to be negligible per unit of energy provided. So it's a poor basis for rejecting nuclear power. In fact, we'd have a better environment if we could substitute that coal mining for uranium mining. I think we'd do a lot less harm. Okay, nuclear power is too expensive. We hear this a lot. We should be pursuing the cheapest options first. So how do they compare to other power sources and other means of cutting emissions? Well, it's very expensive up front. To construct one of these, it is expensive. Costs vary, 1 to 3.5 billion. I've heard Ziggy Swakowski quote 5 billion. But straight after in Barry Brook, our next speaker mentioned that does depend where you do it and the conditions that are applied to it. We are getting reducing costs for more modularisation, more economies of scale, and lessening first-of-a-kind construction. Trying to do something brand new and reinventing the wheel increases the costs. It does have a very competitive lifetime cost of electricity, including the incorporation of the waste management. So here's the chart showing here. Yeah, dirty coal power is the cheapest. Fine, we know that. We're interested in what's next best. Next best for baseload is either gas, combined cycle gas turbine, which still releases a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, or nuclear power. If we look at the carbon cost curve of abatement before, this is another good way of looking at the issue. What can this one tell us about nuclear? The answer is absolutely nothing, because it was excluded from this study. Why? Well, when you dig into the text behind the study, you find that, well, we did it for overseas studies, but we left it out here because we don't think it would get approval by 2020, so we just kind of won't tell you. I think that's an extremely poor reason to not disclose this information to let people come to an informed decision about these issues. And if you dig deeper into the text, you find that if what we were trying to do was cut greenhouse gas emissions, including nuclear power in the equation, would make it a great deal cheaper. So I looked a little harder to find one of these global studies, and yes, it is included. And what it tells us, if you remember, the wider it is, the more abatement that is available. The taller it is, the more expensive it is. It tells us that there is a great deal of abatement available in nuclear. It's a very fat one, at moderate cost, which is fine. I put it to you that if we did that for Australia, it would probably be even fatter because of our disproportionate contribution from energy to our greenhouse gas emissions compared to globally. Don't know that, but I suspect that to be true. So is it too expensive? No, it's highly cost competitive. Including energy, it's highly cost competitive for a abatement. It is not a reason to rule it out. Nearly there. It takes too long to make a difference. This is what we heard. We need a solution now. Now, nuclear power might be ready. We won't get any abatement out of it for a long time. Okay, would it take too long to make a difference? Often we hear this figure of 10 to 15 years to get any abatement. Now, that figure has a source. The source is from the 2006 report looking at nuclear energy, where they laid out some best case and worst case timeframes. They might have thought we had a bit more time back then. Interesting to point out that that's not plant construction, that's the development of the full regulatory frameworks to enable Australia to do it. And once we started constructing plants, we could construct many all at once. I guarantee you there's still going to be a problem in 10 to 15 years' time that needs solving, even if it does take us that long. We're not going to get there by other means. And the French experience supports a very high rollout in a very fast period of time. In something like 20 years, they went from a very small percentage of nuclear power to about 80%. So I think it's very self-fulfilling to keep telling ourselves it's going to take 10 to 15 years. I think if we were determined, we could do it a lot faster than that. And we will make that a lot easier if we're prepared to engage in an open and honest dialogue about it and stop turning our backs on it for essentially no reason. Okay, so I lined up 7 objections and I made it this far going, I think I'm in trouble here. I think I'm about to change my mind. I'm going to have one last bastion of hope. What are other people saying about it that I like and respect? What I used to think was, I am an environmentalist. Those who champion the environment are anti-nuclear. Those who are pro-nuclear are guided by vested interests. Naturally, if someone disagrees with you, they're being paid to. We've all fallen victim to that once or twice. I did, and still do, seek guidance on the issues I'm interested in from people that I think are scrupulous and talented at what they do. Almost everything I knew, everyone I knew at that point was anti-nuclear. Almost everything I read at that point was anti-nuclear. Last but not least, it's true. I was so angry with John Howard for the damage that he did, delaying action on climate change. Yet late in his term started getting interested in nuclear power. I had to believe that if he was for it, I was against it. Growing up a little bit since then. Well, when did I last look at my favourite things on this? I thought, let's look at 3. I'll check out James Lovelock, father of the gay theory on Earth. I'll have a look at James Hansen, arguably the nation's foremost climate change scientist, which is Barry. And I'll look at George Monbiot, the renowned left-wing thinker and columnist from The Guardian in the UK. Hardly industry hacks, these guys. We'll look at George Monbiot first. He said, well, I have changed my position on nuclear power. I used to be for it, I'm now conditionally okay with it, provided these sorts of conditions are met. If you're familiar with George Monbiot, I like him and respect him because he is prepared to change his mind on matters when new and better information becomes available. Nonetheless, he was a very long time opponent of nuclear power, and this was a big deal. And he got a lot of flack for it. Nuked by friend and foe, as you can see, was the column title for that one. A lot of people came and attacked him for taking this position. James Hansen comes out a bit stronger. He says it actually starts to make me angry when people reject this outright. And what if we do need to choose between coal and nuclear? And we need to keep an open mind, and that climate change tells us we have to look at nuclear power, and we can phase out coal right away on the basis of including nuclear power. He does make some mention of carbon capture and storage, but he pretty much goes on to say that. Finally, and perhaps most strongly of all, James Lovelock says this is fed by Hollywood, it's fed by the Greens lobby, but I'm a Green. And I entreat my friends to drop their opposition, which is why we had a really powerful statement I found. So I only had to conclude that actually the anti-nuclear movement does not have a monopoly over people who are really concerned about climate change. And in fact, to be nuclear and to be an environmentalist are 2 distinctly different movements. And many people who really care are either conditionally in favour of nuclear power or outright proponents of it. So I backed